We're
Right,
counting.
Tony? And we're on.
Okay, my countdown's
It
already
already
out.
did it.
It
It
said
said go.
Oh
It said
shit.
go.
Okay. I welcome everybody to the Roomcast, and we got a good one for you today. I know how long has it been a month yet since they decided, or since it leaked?
Okay, so on the evening of Monday, May 2nd, there was a leak of a draft opinion about Roe v. Wade and overturning it. The decision is supposed to come out in July. And so a lot of us advocates, we were already prepped for July, right? We were, of course, not prepped for the draft opinion. I would say a lot of people feel like a thank you to the person who leaked it. We know that the person who leaked it is from the right, not from the left.
Well, on the side of, and their take on it isn't even fair because they're not doing it to like protect women or anything. They're doing it for their own selfish gains of I hate to say this, but population control of too many brown people being born. That's
No. Actually, the opposite.
Exactly
So
the opposite.
it is. So our generation of folks, prior to we went live, we were talking about more people having babies in their 40s. Our generation is a lot of people in their 30s having their first child, right? There's a lot of people in their 20s who are choosing not to have children at all at the moment. Birth control has become very accessible, though there are many pockets of people who can't access birth control. And what's happening is that abortion is the only way to control bodies in a socio-political, economic way and use religion as a way to do that without saying it, right? So
they're basically bringing Jesus into it
when Jesus ain't got nothing to do with how these people actually feel, right? Because if this was really about the babies, let's talk about the past 48 hours.
Okay.
In the past 48 hours, the Republican Party shot down the ability to put funding towards the the formula situation, right? So right now, for those who don't have children, there is a shortage on formula. So back in the beginning of March, there was some word about certain formulas and babies getting sick off of these formulas. My daughter was on Similac Alimentum, which is a hypoallergenic formula, that is the only thing she can drink because everything else in formula makes her sick. She's allergic to. And that was recalled. And then slowly, week by week, every other manufacturer of different types of formula had been recalled. So there's a formula shortage right now on feeding babies.
Was that done intentionally, you would say?
No, that's not necessarily done intentionally. There was formula wasn't being, I guess, paid attention to in the ways that they say it was. So from December to March, there were bad batches being sent out. Now, if you use a small can of formula, it typically lasts 2 to 3 days, depending on the size of your baby, right? That's a $30 can. That would only last my daughter 2 days. So for a week and some change from December to March, she'd be fine. And then all of a sudden she'd be super sick. And then I'd call the doctor, we'd do the weight, she'd be fine. A week and a half later, she'd be sick again, right? And this was happening to a lot of kids across the country. The situation with formula is that it is not being regulated, I guess, in the ways it's supposed to. Why is that important? Because right now, we can barely feed the babies we already have. And the Republicans who are saying that abortion is absolutely the most atrocious thing that someone could ever do have shot down funding to help with the formula shortage, to feed the babies we already have. Now, the money is not going to go towards like the actual creating a formula. From my understanding, the money would go to like the FDA agents that need to be there to make sure that it's being done correctly. Yeah, absolutely. And doing it sort of like an overtime process. So putting all of this money in so we can get all of these people to do this overtime so that we can deal with this as a country.
Now, Porsche, you being a new mother, what's been your experience with the formula, and are you a booby person?
So my baby is on formula, but I know nothing of a shortage because I have enough milk to last until he can't drink milk anymore. Yeah. So when they say shortage, it's because it's all at my house.
Okay.
Ordered the milk when I
okay,
see
so
milk,
folks, we found the culprit.
Yeah. I'm one of those over hoarder people. I have so much milk that at this point there's nowhere else to put it. It's just in the kitchen everywhere. Yeah. But my kid's not going to starve.
Amen.
You know what I mean? You have to be careful about that. When they said shortage, I went and bought every can I see. If I see a can now, I'm going to buy it just in case.
Buyer, right?
The thing is, like, I'm so happy to hear that as your baby is so little that you have found the thing that works, because I didn't have that experience. We went through 4 formulas by the time she was 8 weeks.
That's my niece. I have a niece who had to go through that. Now she's on the plant-based formula, and now she can't find the formula. So, I have a family member in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is one of those 28 states that has no formula. So he went from being on formula to trying to mix the can. What did they say? The carnation with water to give it to him.
Yeah. Or I even heard where you take oatmeal.
Yeah, they're like making all like these different
vitamin.
Listen,
1% milk.
If you can, there are so many other ways that we can help folks, but making your own formula is not it.
That's definitely the first way to get your kids
Some
sick.
mad scientist shit, right?
But like think about how people are already panicking. Right. These are people with money. These are people who are wealthy, right? Because a lot of people think like, oh, wealthy people, they're fine. No, not really.
Not if they can't find milk. Not if literally if you can find it or not.
Right? So we're already having a crisis here about feeding the brand new babies. We're already having a crisis when it comes to like infant mortality. So for those of you who don't really know what infant mortality is, it is the death of a child before the age of 1. And in 2020, our numbers were up to about 19,540 some odd children had died in the year 2020 before the age of 1. We have a maternal mortality crisis in this country, right? Where Black and brown women are dying at higher rates than white women. In the states that have already have trigger laws or abortion laws,
which is some whole like
right, that we already know that have issues. Those states have a 47% higher rate of maternal mortality.
So with that said, like and I know you talked about the maternal mortality. What would be like your take on fixing that? Like, would it be more funding towards the understanding of how to treat them, or how to, what is it like? How do we resolve that?
Oh gosh,
that's a whole nother
podcast. But real quick, right? So we know that hospitals have become a business
at this point,
and in order for doctors to get paid the money that they want to be paid, they need to keep bodies moving. That includes birth. And we do not listen to people's bodies when they're going through birth. A lot of hospitals push their narrative. A lot of hospitals push their medication. A lot of hospitals push C-sections because of whatever reason they can come up with, because they actually get paid more money.
Surgery,
Absolutely, right? So there's a whole lot more money in the bank for everybody when you push people to have babies that their bodies are not necessarily ready to have babies for, right? And then there's a whole other ballgame about postpartum stuff. But what ends up happening is that when people are pregnant, we have, I don't know, like it literally feels like 50, I think we go to the doctor like 50 freaking times before we have the baby.
3 times a week for 3 months at the end of pregnancy.
Right? Like
literally it got to the point where I didn't even have to check in. The lady would just wave and hand me the ticket like, oh, you're back? Oh, okay, here you go.
Like, go do your thing.
At the gym?
Right?
Literally, like, it becomes to a point where they don't even make you stand in line because they're like, "Oh, you're back. Okay, go sit down. We'll tell them you're here."
So once that baby comes out your body, moms jokingly say, or people who give birth jokingly say, like, "Oh, nobody cares about me anymore," because systemically, that is exactly what it feels like. And people do not listen to people when they are giving birth, because people who go to school for this, they believe that they know more about people giving birth. And it is difficult for people to listen to other people's bodies, especially when systemically we know that white doctors or white medical professionals do not listen to Black and brown people.
When they should, because of how more, I hate to say this, but like how more developed they call it the Pan-African form of the Homo sapien is compared to the
right. But you have to remember that back in the day, they believed that we didn't feel pain.
It's not back in the day.
Well, they still kind of do, but they don't say it as much.
No, actually, there's been a study as of 2018 across medical professionals and medical students asking those exact same questions.
Yeah, they don't believe that
do we
feel
believe
pain.
Black and brown people, specifically Black people, do they feel pain just as white people? And the answer for them is no, right? So that is exactly why Black women die at higher rates, because white professionals believe, and I don't want to just say white professionals, because
professionals in general.
It is white professionals, but it's a lot of professionals who go along with the white supremacist notion of medical spaces.
And that's where I could even say the Euro approach to medicine we do in this country.
Yep. Because
maybe time to step away from.
Because there's also a lot of doctors who are not from this country, right, who also subscribe to that notion of white supremacy when it comes to other people, right? And so we know that Black and brown women, specifically Black women, are not protected in the ways that they should, which is why they die at higher rates, because people do not listen to Black women. Even though we all know as a culture, right, like the moment a Black woman puts anything out, that's the next big thing, right? But in order to control Black and brown bodies in the ways that we talked about, we have to think about all the ways that this country makes money off of children. They make money off of children through CPS. They make money off of children by pumping medicine into those children. They make money because they take that Social Security money that those kids get through CPS and they give it back to the state or back to the county, right? They make money by locking these children up, right? I think nationwide, we're spending at least $150,000 a year per child. But here in New York State, we are spending $1 million per year per child that is locked up.
Versus where if you were taking that same $1 million and putting it towards educating them, actually
if you just put it into their life.
Yeah, that's what. But I know,
right? Not just education.
But I know because I used to go to church with Malik Evans. He was president of the school board, and I always used because remember, the school board's been a fucking dumpster fire for like the last 20 years. And I remember a couple times where I said to him, like, Malik, what are you doing that's gonna kind of change this? And he was saying, I'm doing all I can.
You can only
but
do so
the reality
much.
of it is like
you do what you're allowed.
Yeah,
basically.
And when the funding's coming from somewhere else, but you're gonna get it.
Oh my God!
And it has to. And these people.
I don't even want to talk about funding in this fucking county.
Okay, well, we'll talk. We'll close with funding since it's such a hot button topic.
That's another one of those shows.
We'll close with funding on this show. Okay, but no, and I knew when that happened earlier this month, where it allegedly leaked. It didn't leak. They knew what the hell they were playing in. That's why I'm also hearing. I can't reveal my source, but she's saying that it's very possible that Biden is going to pack the Supreme Court to make sure this doesn't pass.
You know, I can't call Biden. I'm going to be honest. Right? Because he's been a lot of talk, right? And we knew he was going to be a lot of talk.
I just wanted Trump out of here.
Right. And that's the truth. Right. And, you know, we have to do as Black and brown folks. I just read a quote. So please don't think I came up with this cool idea, but we have to do the same thing that the Democrats do when they're running. Right. So we need to run. We need to get into the party, get voted in, and then say, fuck the Democrats and like have our own agenda once we're in.
But when you look at the two sides of Democrat, Republican, there's really no difference anymore.
I mean, the differences are really all in the quote unquote values.
Yeah, like I know, okay, the Democrat, hey, citizens, I'm going to give you this money.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. It's yours.
Yeah.
The Republicans, I'm not going to give you the money. And then it'll show up later. And you're not even going to know what happened to get it. But then meanwhile, the Democrats are going to give it to you, but then they're going to want a large portion of it back. And they're going to expect it. And it's just some sick ass. And then not even, I don't know if I've told either one of you, but back when the mayoral election was happening here, it was actually proposed to me that I run.
I mean, considering who we got for the mayor.
No, and that's the thing. But I told them I would love to, but I already know I'll be assassinated as soon as I announce my candidacy at the mayoral level. And I don't think that's ever happened anywhere.
You're so extra.
Very extra. I don't know about assassination. There might have been some protests or something.
Because of the fact that they're going to drop me off a briefcase full of money, I'm going to take it. But what they want done isn't going to happen. I'm going to use it to fund the school system, to make sure all these kids who are cold in the wintertime have coats, that each kid has a free school lunch. Like the shit that's supposed to be happening with the lunch.
The thing is, everybody does that. I'm gonna keep it a buck. Everybody does that. Every organization, every grassroots, everybody is on the ground making sure these kids have the things that they have to survive. That is not what children need to survive. Okay, children do not need the basic day-to-day things. What children need to survive is they need to learn how to read, right?
Absolutely.
And here across our nation, like there's so many kids, at least 60, we are pushing children through the system.
Yeah. And that's a big problem.
And we have grown adults who do not know until they are grown adults, until they are committing crimes, right? That they do not know how to read.
I have a brother that just learned how to read a couple of years ago. We're the same age.
And they have a hard time getting through things. Right. And so there's so much money that is pumped here. And the thing is that we make money off of keeping people poor.
And the problem is that people think it's the poor benefiting from the rich. It's the exact opposite.
Absolutely.
It's the rich benefiting from the poor.
Because that's the only way they can be rich.
Exactly. And the problem is like you have the middle class, you have the upper, like all these levels of middle class before you get to the rich. All of them are standing on the shoulders of the poor. And poor people are so oblivious to it because they've been told you don't matter forever.
I mean, they've just been taught like this is what life is. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know I was poor. I didn't know I was poor. I had no clue.
Oh, and also, Jill, I wanted to tell you, I was in New York City for like 5-6 days. It scared the shit out of me.
Yeah.
I've living in Rochester, and then I travel frequently to LA and DC and all that. But New York City is its own beast.
It's so many people,
and like, when you can walk outside and automatically bump into 1,000 people.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah. And I was not ready for that. And I do not plan on going back ever again.
And
you scared? You got scared?
Nah, I'm joking about that ever again, but my sister lives out there. I'll be out there probably
in a couple months.
Summer. So you have to eventually adjust.
I'm going to be back out, just like I'm in LA all the time with my brother. I'll be in New York.
And that's the thing. Maybe because I grew up in Brooklyn. I lived in Queens. I like that middle school, and it's just like, I did not know that we were like traumatized children. I didn't know that we were poor. I didn't know that we didn't have access to a lot of things because happiness doesn't come from those things, right? But that's because our parents do a hell of a job sheltering us.
That's it. But when you have a parent in our era, especially, where crack was involved, and then they came from,
or you have a family member, right? Because it's not always a parent.
Well, in my case, it was a parent.
I'm talking about the people who shelter us.
Okay.
Right? Like some of us have grandparents.
Edit that part out, please.
Like some of us have grandparents who shelter us and things of that nature. And so it's those people who are the caretakers who really need the financial support in order to take care of the children so that children can become successful. Right? We are a research-centered country. We know all of the answers to our problems. We choose not to do them because those things don't make this country money.
Right.
Right? Putting Black and brown children into school and making sure that they have a quality education, that is what will take care of crime in Black and brown communities. White people know that. They still do not do that because we make more money off of Black and brown children being in CPS and in being in systems and not knowing how to read and not knowing how to function, not knowing how to work, keeping Black and brown people at direct care work levels.
To where you're creating a bunch of employees instead of a bunch of bosses.
Right. Absolutely.
But I also know when I was coming up in school, and I went to Catholic school for 3 years of my education. I remember when I had went back to public school, and I looked like, where's the tennis courts? Where's the
what I was thinking.
Archery? Where's and then like some kid was like, archery? What the hell is archery? I'm thinking like, no, at the school I just came from,
they have everything.
Yeah, it's like, we even had a fucking horse come to the school every so often for us to, and then like it made sense.
Yeah.
And then when I remember I would say these things in that specific school I was at that point, they're like, you can't talk about that. I'm like, I can't. Why not? He said, because we're not privileged to it. But it's the same state budget that for the education. It's just that, and this is where I have such a problem with the charter schools. I mean, charter schools are dope. I appreciate them, but if you understand what they were put there for, it actually messed things up.
Yeah. Well, charter schools are just like small businesses, right? They're run by somebody with an agenda for whatever that mission is. Right. So they don't necessarily have to subscribe to all of the bigger things that bigger either public schools have to be a part of, which is why they're able to do what they want, which is why people are able to fall through the cracks and get money and never actually build a school.
Yeah. And that's
and run with that money and buy planes and shit. Right. Yeah. Once again, white privilege.
Hookers and cocaine.
Yeah. Once again, white privilege. Right. Yeah. Because if a bunch of Black and brown people all of a sudden started going out and getting loans to build up charter schools, they'd be like, wait a minute, we've got to regulate this shit.
Exactly. Immediately, they'll come up with a reason why you can't do it anymore.
Before we really dive into the topic of why we're here, I think the other host is here.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break.
Cool.
And then, I think Jalen's here because I heard him open the door.
When we come back, let's start talking about, I'd like to talk about the traditional family and why that traditional family existed when it comes to laws on people's bodies.
Okay. All right. So we'll be right back on the Rootcast. I am Rick Tony here with
Portia Ryland
and Jillian Quigley.
All right. And we'll be back. Sony, cut it to break. And then come in here.
I think he went that way.
Talk to the women.
You heard me? He went that way. I don't think he's in the room.
Oh, okay. Well,
we're just kind of recording right now.
That's just cool. Like, you can edit all everything.
What you were just saying, I was thinking the same thing. So my family, we didn't have the traditional, what's the word? The crackhead, the poor family. I know nothing about that. I came from Brockport. When I came to Rochester, it was for my senior year. I was horrified. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
And my first day of school in the city school district was 9/11.
Really?
I promise. I walked in the door and the plane hit the building. Boom. I'm like, oh, you guys watch movies in the hallways? They're like, this is not a movie. We're shutting down the building. I'm like, well, let me call somebody because I'm not staying here.
It was like
I can't do this.
I was at Edison for the time I was there before I walked out. Bullshit education.
Well, I mean, I only had 1 year left. And I literally only had art gym for every day. So, and I didn't have school with them. I just was there. And I'm like, these kids are wild. Why did y'all send me here? I'm not going back in there. Like, there's grown men in this building. My dad's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm never going back after the first day. He's like, I don't get it. I'm like, there's a grown man in my math class. He's like, I don't get it. I'm like, he's 20. He got a beard. He got kids. I'm not going back in there. You know what I mean?
I think I was in summer school in 99. There was a 17-year-old kid. He was slow. So he was 17 by 8. He was probably like 13.
Yeah, but still.
And I remember, he had a liking to me, but really because he wanted to fight me. I didn't know this until the last day of summer school. But yeah, it was because I was just amazed that everything
was brand new. It's like, wow.
I'm looking at it, I'm like, dude, why are you here?
Yeah.
Like honestly, if I got to that point where I'm 17 taking classes,
well, they stopped doing what they told me was they stopped doing the social promotions. So if you just didn't pass, you just didn't pass.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, that can't be a good idea. Why isn't there a classroom for them?
Or was it academic? They called it something else to make it sound better. Mm-hmm. But social promotion is what it
That's
is.
basically what it was.
But and I remember like his name was Ennio. I remember barely spoke English. He probably spoke English, but apparently to get what they wanted, he told them to fake it. I don't know. Well, he was a sharp kid. But he was like, he had a beard, he had like tattoos.
Yeah, like wait a minute, what are we doing here?
Is this seventh grade summer school math class?
Right, like hello, what is this grown man doing in here with us?
To tell everyone, like, no, this is Ennio. He's here. He's really in the seventh grade.
He's supposed to be here.
And nobody got it. But I'm thinking maybe the city school district, because this is at a time too when everything was starting to fall apart and they couldn't hide how bad it was anymore.
Listen, I was horrified for the first like 4 months. Every day, I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna be able to do this. Yeah. They do everything in this building. I don't.
Then I remember my health was like, because the fluid was on my brain. It was starting to show, and I'm telling everybody, I'm like, Mom, something's wrong. Dad, bitch, something's wrong, because he never fucking listened to me. Like the only time he showed up was to yell at me and reprimand me for messing up, and the only reason I messed up was because I had fluid on my brain. And his dumbass, and I hate to keep talking about him. God damn.
You in the mood today?
I'm ready because I'm gonna see him a little bit. I'm going over my grandma's house. My little cousins are coming over.
Mercury's in retrograde. So
pretty much. Everybody's emotions are high.
Yep. Just take it slow. Listen, this is the week for release.
Oh,
right.
I released 2-3 times.
That ain't what she meant.
That's not what I
meant.
That
ain't what she meant.
So some of the things that you seeing him later. You know, I'm not saying don't get it off your chest now, but
I can't talk to him. He's a bitch.
Well, you can't talk to him because you don't choose to listen. But that's a whole nother ball game.
No, trust me, I'm like this because of him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
you are like this because of yourself.
Pretty much.
Okay.
36, sir. 36.
Let's start taking
accountability.
Responsibility for who you are. You created this madness.
Sony.
He just gave you the DNA.
So he's still busy. Calling him ain't gonna help you. He's still over there.
I see why he didn't want to come in now. Being gang piled by women.
We can jump back in if you want to.
Yeah, I don't know where it's at. Okay, he's back on because the screen just kicked off.
Yeah.
Are you there, Sonny?
Oh, maybe not.
Stanley.
Somebody.
I guess we can just pick up. All right, fuck it.
Okay.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the Rudecast. I am Rick Tony, here with two very, very special ladies, who one I know is very educated on this topic because she's been screaming that it was going to happen from the moment I met her, and then a very dear close friend of mine who's actually supposed to be my original co-host. So, ladies, and I know Portia's it hasn't even been 2 months that you became a mother.
No.
And Jill, I know you are still early in your motherhood of being an actual parent.
Oh, kind of.
Even though you
kind of. She's crazy. She's in toddlerhood.
I saw the video the other day.
She's 18 months.
She like had the marker.
So she's busy right
now.
That
wasn't the other day. That was this morning.
Oh, that was this morning?
That was this morning.
I was high until like 1 p.m.
She wrote,
I did a lot last night.
I gave her a marker. It was like, I don't know. It was like 10 o'clock. She got up. She slept in late today. It was, thank goodness. But she got up. And we went downstairs and she swiped this marker while I'm making her breakfast. And I was like, I'm not fighting, whatever. Like, here's your paper. And she comes back.
Nothing on the paper.
She's got tattoos.
Nothing on the paper.
All over her.
Right? I mean, some stuff on the paper. She tried it. And then she liked it on her arm. And then just as I got down to have a conversation with her and ask her about herself, she came behind me and she pointed to my tattoos on my back. And I was like, damn it.
Can't even say nothing. Oh,
I was like, you like mommy's tattoos? That's all I could get out.
Invitation.
Yeah. So, right. And then she showed me hers.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what it's like having kids.
Jill, let's get down to the nitty gritty meat and potatoes of this whole shit.
So meat and
what
potatoes.
The hell are those Republicans trying to do to you guys?
So it's not just us.
It's
right?
not us at all.
Right? Because the law is on bodies with people with uteruses, but it's affecting all people because there are so many people who get people pregnant who don't want those people to be pregnant, right? There are a lot of people.
Why did everybody start looking at me?
Because you're the only one in the room with a penis.
Literally directly across from us, sir.
Why did I just feel like 100 people entered the room and they all started staring at me?
people with uteruses can only get pregnant 3 to 4 days out of the month during ovulation time, which is about 10 to 14 days after the first day of their period or their menstrual cycle. People with penises can get someone pregnant every single day, and they can probably get multiple people pregnant per day, right? So in order for a load of ejaculation to be good to get someone pregnant, right? Typically, they say there should be at least 20 million sperm within the load. On average, every time you ejaculate, you probably let go of about 300 million sperm if you are a healthy individual, right? It takes about 0.25 of a second for that sperm to start regenerating in your testicles. It takes only 24 hours for you to get back to that 300 mil. So that is why some people are able to ejaculate, go for round 1, keep going, and have another round, right? Now, if you have multiple people in that room that you are ejaculating in, right, those are multiple people you can get pregnant at one time. Those people with uteruses that you may be ejaculating in, some of them might be ovulating. Some of them might not be, right? So if they're not ovulating, they can't get pregnant. But if somebody is ovulating, they can get pregnant, and it would only be by you, right? By your sperm. We are regulating the wrong bodies if we are honestly trying to deal with the population control or unwanted pregnancies, or if we really cared about babies, we would make sure prior to even conception, right? Like that, those sperm were taken care of. Now, we talked about vasectomies earlier. Vasectomies cannot easily be undone, right? So a lot of people are like, oh, just, do a quick snip. But from my understanding, it's not always easy to go back in and repair.
It's also not a guarantee that it's going to work.
Yes,
no,
because they give you the
absolutely.
Like me, I had a vasectomy.
Yeah, sure, whatever. Right? I wouldn't trust you at all.
Was it the week after?
No, it would be so I've had a conversation with a man who had a vasectomy, and I was just like, so what was it like getting your balls cut open? Jokingly. And the look, he blinked slowly, he felt the pain.
He went right back to his surgery.
Body, and I was just like, "Oh, honey, I'm sorry," right? Because people with uteruses, we go through a lot of pain down there all of the time. So when somebody else is going through pain in that area, we're like, I get it. Birth control for people with penises has been studied for a very long time. The issue is that those people who go through the trial come back and they say, these were all of my side effects, therefore I would never take it again.
I got boobies now.
No, not at all.
No?
Headaches, nausea,
acid,
body aches. No.
Right? Basically, all the symptoms we get for a period.
No. Well, yeah, right. Headaches, nausea, body aches, upset stomach, diarrhea. Those were the symptoms that people with penises were experiencing on the birth control trials. And then they said, okay, we're going to stop this. They don't want to go through with this. Mm-hmm. If you look at the side effects for people with birth control who are already on birth control, there's approximately 70 different side effects. It affects our sex drive, our libido. For Black and brown women, it affects our hair, depending on the type of birth control we are on. For some of us, we bleed longer because we're on the wrong birth control. Mm-hmm. For some of us, we don't bleed at all. And people are like, oh, this is fantastic. No, you should naturally still have something happening. Right? I'm sure.
I'm not on anything.
Right?
I'm a virgin.
Think of dry vulvas and dry vaginas, right? Why people are not, necessarily into it. Exhaustion, fatigue, depression, high appetites, right? A lot of people are like, oh, I gained weight on that birth control. No, you gained weight because that birth control, you didn't, not because you were eating a lot, but because that birth control kept saying you're hungry. Mm-hmm. If we compare, there's about 5 side effects for people with penises on the birth control studies. For people with uteruses, it's like 70, right? We're going to keep seeing that in every situation that we talk about, because as a country or as a world, we don't give a shit about women. We don't care about their pain. We do not care about people with uteruses, right? Like, we don't care about women. We care less about non-binary and trans folks. And even more if that intersection mixes with them being Black or brown.
Absolutely. And I can speak on that too, being that I want to say prior to us meeting, I was extremely homophobic. Like, just stay away from me, gay person. Don't touch me. I don't want to know what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
Just you figure it out and come back to me when you're straight.
Yeah.
But I think after getting to know you and our constant shows and everything, and understanding that Landon identifies as a gay male.
Yeah.
Who's my cousin.
Yeah.
I told him flat out, like, look, before you decided to be that way, you were still my cousin.
Yeah.
So if I was to identify you as being gay first before family, that'd be wrong of me.
Yeah.
And I need you to know that, I love you first for being my cousin.
Yeah.
And if, you two make, if that's the life choice you make, I love you.
And that piece right there that you said, 100% of the time, if somebody who is Republican, somebody who is extremely religious, close to the church,
which is my upbringing,
right? Yeah. If their family member went through something, and even though they didn't believe in it, as family first, and you take care of family first, which means there are going to be people in this country, even after abortion is banned, that will still have access to abortions because people with money will be able to pay for those things, right? Just like things used to be hush hush back in the day, there will be things that are hush hush now.
Underground Railroad abortions.
Right?
Okay, I think Jalen's here. Yeah. We're gonna do like a 2-minute break and then we'll.
He walked off. I don't think he wanted to be a part of this either. He went back that way.
He's gonna be the only pair of balls in here taking all this abuse.
Nobody's abusing you. It's just telling the truth. If you can't handle it, then you better make sure you use some protection, sir.
You ever put on a leather jacket and then rub to sleep?
That's because you never freaking put on a shirt underneath. That shirt would be lubrication. We've had this conversation before. You don't listen.
He doesn't want to hear that because he doesn't want to use
no.
Because
he wants his dick to itch.
He wants to have.
He wants it to
so
burn
bad.
Yeah,
that's what it is. He wants to get anybody pregnant. It's like, bro, you can't just get anybody pregnant.
He has no idea how difficult it is to have a baby with somebody who is not supportive or not mentally stable.
He hasn't learned. I'm learning. And my son's father, we both are on our first kid.
Yeah.
It's a mess.
Yep, us too.
It's a mess, okay? Yeah. I wasn't ready for a baby. He wasn't ready for a baby. Now we have a baby.
He's here. This is Jalen.
We were together for years.
20 years. 20 years, but
it's still not ready.
No.
Okay, you said I'm gonna take this.
Hi, nice to meet you, Jillian.
Portia.
Jalen, you been on the show with Joe before?
No.
Right there. Yeah,
I'm not going to divulge too much.
No, they're giving it to me, so I'm gonna deflect a lot towards you.
Nobody's giving you anything. You walking yourself in the door and then trying to slam it shut.
So I really want to be on camera like that.
Okay, now I just give it on.
I know
put it all on me.
Camera like that.
All on me. Okay.
Or I just take the camera off. So.
Not camera.
What's the conversation?
Oh, you didn't tell him what the conversation was.
Roe v. Wade being abolished and women's rights. All that.
What's the debate?
No, there's no debate. We were just letting.
Discussion.
We basically was letting Eric have it during our break
yeah,
moment.
I'm
You just
saying
walked
things
in
that
on
are
that.
So, are we back on? Are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
All right. So, I'm a sex educator here in Monroe County. I'm also the co-director for Rochester Sexual and Reproductive Justice Task Force, and it's pretty much we are an organization of health advocates, health educators who make sure that laws and policy represent what people actually need, especially Black and brown people. And so with abortion being sort of in the news and being the hot topic, we decided, let's talk about it. How does that actually affect us? right? So Eric wanted to talk about women's rights. We've talked a lot about traditional families and how traditional families have been so important. But if we really talk about traditional families, right, our grandmas and grandma sticking by grandpa through all of the things forever, right?
23 kids.
Right. We have to talk about the laws on why grandma stuck with grandpa.
Because she couldn't go anywhere technically and speak for herself, right?
It's way more than that, right? So women at a certain point in time could not rent unless a husband or a father signed off on that. Women could not.
Take me back to the dates. How long ago are we talking?
Oh God,
70s?
It
was the 70s,
right? It was prior to the 70s, right? But my parents were born in the late 50s, right? So in order for my grandmother to buy her children a house, the man she was having a relationship with, which was not the father of any of her children, he bought the house.
She couldn't buy it.
Right. So a lot, like still to this day, like, it's conversation in the family. Like it's like the taboo thing to talk about.
Can we talk region during this time in the late.
So we're
late
talking
50s?
So we're talking Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
In the 60s.
Wow.
Right?
Epic.
Also, anybody here seen West Side Story?
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So my father's side of the family are white Puerto Ricans. My mother's side of the family are black Puerto Ricans, right? So they grew up in the same neighborhood until my white Puerto Rican grandmother was able to come up with enough money, save enough money to then buy this house, right? They could not say that they were Puerto Rican,
Right.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So the man buying the house was Italian. And now everybody's big thing in my family was always like, oh, he held it over her. He bought the house for her. And I'm like, y'all, he had to buy the house. One, for demographic, in order for y'all to live on this side of town. Two, because she is a woman and she could not. And she didn't have a husband to sign off on any of those things. She could not have a bank account, right? She could not own a house. She could not buy a house. In certain regions in this country, if women gave birth and did not have husbands, they took their babies.
Wow.
Right? Especially if they were black and brown.
Never knew that.
And put them into orphanages, especially if they were teen parents. Right? And teen parents only became a hot topic or a hot button in the 80s.
It was more the early 90s, wasn't it?
More of the 80s because of the crack epidemic. Right? So they were like, look at all of these teen parents being crackheads, right? Like, it was a big thing back then. But teen programs didn't become a thing to the 90s. And that's because
I did a Not Me Now commercial too, y'all. I was the star.
Right.
They wanted to sell it to Hollywood because I was in it. It was pretty dope.
Oh God. Right. So you ever just roll your eyes?
That's all you can do is just turn your
roll your
head
eyes
and
and
keep going.
Right. So for a lot of our traditional families, if we think about it, I don't know about y'all, right? I'm gonna call out my family. I got aunts and uncles that don't belong to my grandma. Right? Like, my grandma didn't stay through that because she loved him. I'm sure she stayed through that after.
He stepped out.
You didn't have a choice.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. Okay. I had to get where you're coming from.
It don't make no sense that my mama and her sister 6 months apart, right? Like,
unless he was stepping. Yeah. Papa was a Rolling Stone.
And I'm hugging somebody else and calling her what? What is she? Who's that?
Right.
Oh, well, that's their mama.
Hi.
Oh, that's their mama. And they got you, right? There are so many of us who got extra cousins, extra aunties, and uncles because grandpa was a Rolling Stone.
Well, my mom's dad, he traveled the world.
Right?
Put it like that.
My mom's youngest sister is 6 months younger than my oldest brother.
Wow.
Okay.
Oh, no. I got an uncle, 26? And his mom, when he was born, was only 18.
That's my direct family. My nieces and nephews are older than my sister, so we're
my
used to it now. Like they all back to back, and my sister's the last one.
And my pop spoke 7 languages and was his passport when he died was crazy.
So a lot of the rhetoric from religious folks comes from this need to get back to this old country, this need to get back to the traditional family in order to make this country prosper in that way.
It's impossible though with the addition of technology. because things don't work like they used to.
Well, the thing is that in order for that family to thrive in the ways that it did back then, there needed to be laws to make sure that people who were part of that family could not leave.
Right.
Right. If women were being abused, where were they going? They could not leave. Right.
Unless going to the kitchen.
I'm gonna fuck you up.
Hey, okay, quick joke, everyone. Force.
I'm gonna take.
Why don't you ever buy a woman a watch?
Oh, because then I'm gonna know what time it is. I don't really know the answer to that one.
There's a clock on the stove.
Yeah.
Oh.
I told Jill that one a while back, and she was ready to like pounce
Well,
on
I
me
didn't
and
see
beat my face in.
that wasn't really funny, Eric. You see, I'm like, oh.
I was supposed to
that's why
ask it
Eric's
to him. That's why.
Yeah.
That's why Eric's so damn skinny, because he don't eat.
I'm
He ain't got
sexy.
no woman.
That's the part right
Jill,
there.
I was fat when you met me.
Right, but why were you fat? It wasn't because you were
'cause
eating all
getting
the
off of
time.
pills and,
Exactly.
my body had to.
So
Yeah,
what she
it's
said
fine.
was
Like
right then.
Starving. Right.
That's what she
Nah, I
said.
had to get I'm tall. I'm
You
taking
gonna,
the shirt
you gonna
off.
keep starving.
You know,
keep
y'all
making it.
lose it. That's why I keep an eye.
Yes. Yeah. Totally losing. I'm
Yeah,
totally
y'all.
losing.
Woo! Look at
We're losing?
Eric.
No, I got the top on.
Eric.
Jill.
I got potato salad making elbows. I ain't never losing.
You see, I'm like, I looked at them. We're losing.
Okay.
No, I said y'all lose it. You
No.
know, yeah. But now, so to kind of get off of that aspect of it to more
So
how it affects y'all, being that you
well, it doesn't
basically, if this passes, and I know New York State isn't in any danger because, like, they've already said, even when Cuomo was leading the
Yeah.
yeah.
So New York State is in danger. We're gonna get there real quick, right?
Okay.
So this whole rhetoric is really run by a lot of evangelicals or evangelicals. Yeah, evangelicals.
Yeah, I got an uncle who's an evangelical
Right.
Christian, and he's annoying.
Prior to 1973 and Roe v. Wade coming into effect, abortion was really a Catholic issue, right? But Catholics don't necessarily do things in a violent way. We do things like behind the curtain, obviously, right? We all know how Catholics get down. You know, their curtains have been
Shay's
unveiled.
not on this week.
Right.
She has her own little take on Catholics.
Right. So from my understanding, so this comes from Erica Smith, who's a sex educator, and she says that they weren't even interested in abortion until 1979, right? But since the late 70s, there have been at least 11 murders, 26 attempted murders of abortion providers, 42 clinic or home bombings, and 194 incidents of arson. And this all has to do with abortion.
Yeah.
Right. You know, as somebody who does reproductive justice, I have reached out to abortion providers here to like try and do things with them, and they're like, no, thank you. And I'm just like, why? What is wrong
They
with
don't
you?
want to
Right? As an
advertise what
advocate,
they do.
It's not even advertise, is that their job is already difficult on the things that they do, right? Being there for people, being there for their patients. It's enough that we don't have enough of those people because they're old white men standing out on the street with these little signs, like they ain't got nothing else to do all damn day.
Oh, they're retired from Kodak and Xerox and Boston Lime.
Right. And
do that.
RPD and
Yeah.
shit like that.
Fire
and-
department and yeah.
Right. And like go home and watch porn. Like I know you hate your wife,
Yeah.
but like go do something.
Well, no, they love it when they're beating her face in and
that's a whole nother ballgame. White people are a whole nother ballgame when it comes to their culture. But anyway,
I'm sorry, white people, but you guys know I like to poke the hornet's nest when it comes to y'all and the way you operate. So if it bothers you, don't listen to the rest of the show.
yeah, because you know, it's all about how do we make money on these bodies?
That's it.
Right. And in order to do that, they use this like this is all about God, right? This is all about saving the baby. This is all about this baby has a right to live. What baby?
And that's
right.
the
Because
other
when that
thing.
baby gets here, you're going to hate that baby if it's black or brown.
Yeah.
You're going to hate that baby if it's gay. You're going to hate that baby if it has a disability or if it has a learning disability, right? And you kill children more. We kill way more children in this world, right? By giving them lack of resources, lack of funding, lack of the things that their parents need in order to take care of them, in order to make money off of the poor being poor.
Yeah.
And that's what's really happening.
And if you look at it from the way, I'm not sure if this still is, you wouldn't probably know. Is the contract that feeds the schools in New York State still the same contract that feeds the prisons?
Oh, I don't know that, but I will say that food is gross. I look at it every.
I mean, if it ain't, it's the same company that's sending it
I
out.
want
They're
to
giving
say
them
back
kids
when I
jail
was
food.
like in primary school, my mom was working at the U of R. She said, no, the Amway contract that U of R just signed was similar to the Amway contract that the state signed for all the school
Have you seen
districts.
the food?
I haven't eaten school lunch.
Listen, they're giving them kids worse food than they're getting at the jail. The jail food don't come moldy. No. We actually had lunch. Right. We had lunch. They don't have lunch. They getting whatever they send.
I never trusted that fish and cheese. I'm gonna tell y'all the truth.
I mean, I didn't eat the school lunch, but I saw it. They had it, you know.
Oh, when middle school came,
I was fortunate. My parents didn't let me. My mom came to the school one time. She was like, "Oh no."
Y'all had city lunch and urban suburban lunch, and they both was good.
Well, our school had Burger King, Taco Bell. I went to Brockport. We didn't have lunch. We had restaurants around the cafeteria that you could go to. So I don't know.
Going to summer school at East High, and McDonald's.
I got to Marshall and seen that line. I was like, they're going to starve us here. We need help. She was like, no, just order food. Yummy Garden was my lunch. The pizza place down the block.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever ate the school lunch in the city one time.
I was at summer school at East High, and they used to like, you guys can't leave campus.
I ain't never eat lunch at the summer school. I was only there half a day. I just kept moving after that.
Right. Once that first class over, I'm going home.
And then
nobody's staying for the whole day.
You know what's messed up is like looking at how they used to feed us like a whole nasty ass cheeseburger with whole milk, and then wonder why my stomach was always fucked up.
Right, but these kids ain't even getting that.
You know, towards my later years, I'm starting to see what these kids get because we had the pizza with the wheat pizza, the straight crushed up tomato for the sauce, a little bit of
it's all processed
terrible
now.
Processed cheese.
Yeah.
I mean, it was terrible.
No, but now I could just imagine because how bad they got to stretch it. Like me being Haitian, you know, I eat the soup jambu every January 1st.
And a lot of the kids, I mean, is it the same number of kids in school? Or was it more kids back then? Or I mean,
because the birth rate went down, is it more or less than it would be in the 90s?
I mean, I think in the 90s, I think it depends on the region. I think it depends on what we're looking at. I think it depends on resources. Yeah. Because in the 90s, y'all had a lot more people here because of like Kodak and shit like that, right? Yeah. As industry shut down in regions, people leave, people move. As colleges open, people come back. So I think it really depends on all of those things. Mm-hmm. I think they know that what we feed our children impacts us, right? Definitely. Which is why we have organizations here who do really great things to make sure kids are getting access to food.
And families and parents.
Right, but every week on a Friday, I walk into Monroe County Children's Center, which is the detention center.
Oh, you work at the CDC?
Yeah.
Oh, I got colleagues there. That's fire.
And I teach sex ed out there.
Oh, word.
And there is so much land out there. Mm-hmm. And I just look at all this beautiful green grass.
Teach the kids how to farm.
Minus across the street.
Right? Huh?
That other prison across the street.
Industry.
Yeah,
right? And so there's 2 campuses.
But it's still, it's a lot of land. Like you said,
it's
huge.
So much land, right?
Why not?
It's so beautiful that like when I'm walking through there, like there's fucking deer walking past me, and I'm like, please don't charge me, bro. Right? Like, and it is as flat as the green behind you.
So they can use it for farming.
Right?
Teach these kids how to hunt, farm, and fish.
That's a fact.
Like if we really care about our earth, right? There are so many things that we can do to change the way we do things, but we don't do that on purpose, right? Like it is there. So kids in the prison system already have special ed issues. 6 out of 7, all of them have issues. 70% have mental health problems, right? 1 out of every 10 children have been sexually abused before the age of 18. If we genderize that for girls who are in the prison system, 3 out of every 4 have been sexually abused before they enter. Typically, they've been sexually abused within 7 days of being arrested. 65% of them come from the CPS system.
Yeah, that's a fact. That's a huge deal.
Right, which is why they're running away. 70% of these kids who are in the prison system are there for running away, for doing some shit that they shouldn't have been doing because their age says they're illegal, like drinking, right? Like truancy.
I got a question. Yeah. This is for the ladies here on the show. I saw somebody, I'm not going to say their names, but they mentioned, and when you bring up foster care and CPS, they mentioned the impact that this decision of Roe versus Wade will have on foster care. I'm not sure if it's going to be. I'm sure if it was conspiracy or. Can you divulge a little bit more into how that will be impactful?
The thing is that people have for forever people have been having unwanted pregnancies. Right, that's the truth. I mean, there are so many of us. There are so many of us here.
Not one.
I was an oops, right? My mom will 100% tell you, like, you were planned, like, lie, right? In the 80s, lie.
I'm happy I was the guy who technically is the one I came out of. I'm ready.
Right, but there are so many people who are on this planet who were just like, fuck, we're pregnant, right? Like, I guess we're having a baby.
Yeah.
There are going to be more people that if abortion bans continue to happen, there are people who will get pregnant, not necessarily want that kid, but will take care of that kid and will love that kid. Where CPS comes into play really comes into how are we supporting those people who are having children, right? We do not have good disability. We do not have good FMLA, right? So family medical leave. If you have a baby naturally, right? So if it comes out of your vagina, you get 6 weeks of disability leave.
And paid maternity leave, right? That's what it called.
No.
Disability.
You get disability,
like
right?
Actual work.
Actual working disability, which only equals to about $180 a week, right? For 6 weeks, that's all you get. If you had a C-section, you get 8 weeks. And then if you work for a company that gives out family medical leave, right, which means your company has to have, I believe, over 50 participants working for that company, right? So think about all the folks that work for small companies, right? Small businesses, people who work for themselves, entrepreneurs. There is no family medical leave to make sure. And that family medical leave that is here, that some people get, is only about 10 to 16 weeks, depending on how long they've worked for their company.
Now, I'm just probably getting off topic where we're at, but I had something I wanted to ask. So they were saying that, and we'll talk about RBG and what happened after she died, like probably in the closing segments, but close hanger abortions. Like, can you kind of go into depth of what that is and why if it does happen more, it happens. Like, we got to admit that. But with them abolishing Roe v. Wade in those states where, like, what state was it? Oklahoma over the weekend. That as soon as you get pregnant, that's it.
So let's talk about how this affects people outside of abortion, right? First, if we were to have an ectopic pregnancy, do y'all know what an ectopic pregnancy is?
No, break it down.
So an ectopic pregnancy is when the sperm and the egg meet in the fallopian tube, not in the uterus. And the baby starts, or the fetus, or the cells start to grow. It's not even an embryo yet. It can't even get that big.
Cells.
It's just cells, right? Together, right? Maybe a blastocyst. So prior to even being an embryo, right? So small, but it starts to grow in the fallopian tube. You guys know what a coffee stirrer, like how thin those are, right? Those brown coffee stirrers. That's how big fallopian tubes pretty much are. So when something starts to grow in that, it causes extreme pain. And two things will happen if that person does not get medication. They will lose that fallopian tube and may not be able to have children from that body part, or more than likely, they will bleed out and die. So if people have an ectopic pregnancy, they typically find out within the first 4 weeks, right? Because it can't grow that much without causing severe pain. That person cannot be given medication if abortion is banned. If a baby dies inside of a uterus, or stops living, or stops being viable at any point in time throughout the pregnancy, that person cannot be given medication to start birth in order to let that baby go, in order to give that baby, to let that baby go. So typically what happens is that person who is pregnant will go into sepsis, and that person will probably die.
I've spoken on this in the past on probably a couple shows with you on, but when I was 19, I had a girl pregnant, and I 100% know this is why I was so out there in my 20s. But basically, when she confirmed she was pregnant, we went to the doctor. Doctor said, like, everything's good now, but unfortunately, because of the way everything down there is, you cannot carry this baby to term. And it is going to perish inside of you. I think we had just found out the gender. Like, it was a girl. We named it Erica Jane. It was dope. I was like, yeah, my name, but
her.
Oh,
yeah, that's a fact.
Well,
named her, not
named
it.
them. Put it like that.
Named her.
Her. Okay. Well, it's her. Okay. We named her Erica Jane, and like right after that, she just you could tell it was happening, and I remember she didn't even let me be there when she was going through where they had to take it out of her, and then after, like, she changed, and
from her trying to tell them it's not that they took it out of her. She had to have that baby.
So regardless of how pregnant you are, if a miscarriage happens, you give birth.
You have to have. She had that baby.
I've had 2 miscarriages, and I need y'all to understand that the abortion ban is not just about like you can't have abortions. This is also, there are states here that want to criminalize people for having abortions and abortion providers. So if abortion becomes murder, does that mean miscarriage now becomes manslaughter?
Have they taken it that far?
It's not yet.
Probably,
but
that's probably next.
But why not?
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And that's when when they get their logic.
In some of the states, there are citizen arrests, right? Which means that if Eric got me pregnant, and Eric and I decided like we cannot have this baby.
Bro, you got a baby on the way,
right? But we decided like we cannot have this baby, right? And you are Eric's brother, and you're like, no, this ain't right. You can call someone and make sure Eric and I get arrested, but I would be the person who would do time because I'm the one with the person in my body. That's right?
Crazy.
All right, so Porsche, and I mean, so being that you found out you were pregnant the way you did, and I'm not sure at what point, but when they told you, did they offer the alternative or?
They basically ask you what you want to do. That's the quote. So what are you going to do?
So they still do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how that works. Like, what are you going to do? And you go, what do you mean? What are you going to do? And they're like, do you want to talk about alternative measures to having the baby? And it's like, well, what do you mean alternative measures? What are we talking about here? Well, I wasn't sure what they meant because I'm like, what do you mean alternative?
She really didn't. Yeah.
I'm like, excuse me. And she's like, oh, so some people don't want to. Do you want to keep the baby? And I'm like, what do you mean? Do I want to keep the baby? She was like, yeah, we can give you a pill. There's a procedure. I'm like, okay, you got all these many options, but you didn't offer me any prenatal care though.
Yeah, so
you know what I mean? They immediately. So one of the first things they do is ask if you want to keep your baby.
Yeah. So Jill, with that, how would that change? Being that Roe v. Wade is possibly
they're going to stop asking you that. You're going to have that.
That would no longer be an option.
Probably about to stop selling Plan Bs too, huh?
Absolutely. So
that's about to go.
The market.
So right now, a lot of people don't realize that rolling back Roe v. Wade can also roll back a lot of our other civil rights, right? Like access to contraceptives. So they don't want us to have birth control. They don't want us to have abortions. They don't want us to have.
They trying to nip the birth control.
Yeah.
Yes. Right?
Why you stuttering? You got nervous?
I'm a married man. First of all, I've been with my wife for 8 years.
Going on a year married.
I'm just going on a year married. But I'm just saying,
but
as far
still,
as the birth control, I know I got sisters. So that's just not just for
right.
That's for
everybody.
It lightens. Like I know.
Well, no,
I don't have
it's not just for birth control. A lot of women use birth control for other means to help them with them, but
yeah, I know from watching my sister when she first went on it, and she was like 14, 15. I didn't get it.
Yeah, because they give it to you to regulate.
No, yeah, but I remember my mom telling me, my mom actually put her on it. I remember saying to my mom, "Why are you worried about Mystique getting pregnant? Like, she's not gonna have sex. Like, this is not." Then I didn't understand everything else that came with taking birth control.
Right.
Like, it actually helps regulate the but and then us not being able to go through all that, we really don't. Look into
That's crazy. Yeah, them Plan Bs about to really hurt a lot of people.
Right. Also, right. This may also affect marriage equality. Right. Right. So this also can start to roll back marriage equality. This will affect LGBTQ marriages, LGBTQ relationships, and it could, if depending on how far they could actually get, because it is not really about the text of the Constitution, but more of the structure of the Constitution.
How would this affect the?
This could also affect interracial marriages.
How?
Because the thing is that.
So I could be arrested for getting my Tiger Woods on.
Right. Yeah. At some point, right? It really depends.
Oh, you're saying like
I'm saying how
no more
far
white
they
girl,
want
I
to
wanna
push
be your
this.
man.
Got you.
It's just
Right?
a downhill roll is what they starting. Basically, they're
Because-
gonna repeal back all the rights.
100%.
So
right?
I can't go to like the country and look to get really loaded with a white girl. And,
Well, if you look
Kendrick
at
gave us our last spiral. That white girl.
right,
So.
if you look at white people and what white people in the census actually are, right?
Are they still listed as majority?
Of course they are, but right, who falls under white? When you look at Latinos, right? Latinos are boxed into either you are
Black, non-Latino, Black Latino, white Spaniard, Latino.
It is very, 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 very seldom that you ever see Black Hispanic, right? You either see white, non-Hispanic, white, Hispanic, or Black.
Or other. Others
or other, right?
Yeah,
of course, you see Asian and so on and so forth. What I'm saying is that the majority of Latinos have been taught that we are not Black. So we pick white. And it just happens to fall within the narrative that helps the population, the Caucasian population, because a lot of people from other countries will choose white because that's the only thing that makes sense to them.
So wait a minute. So that's why y'all got the just the Hispanic box by itself, but they never. So I always seen white. I always seen Black African American. I always seen
That's why they ask Hispanic or non-Hispanic separately.
So that's
and
not
on
there.
the East Coast,
you gotta just press white and then not. Wow.
I dated a Cuban girl, and Cubans are the most ass backwards people about their racial identity.
That's a whole nother conversation for us to talk about, like Latinos and race.
Look, Cubans
is a whole
when it comes to what they
ballgame.
identify as, and are they going to lick the boot? There's no question. It's
because the colonization is real in those spaces too, right? The colonization just comes in a different in a different language, right? And so they have been able to blanket over the abuse because they have still survived, right? And so we can talk about, we can talk about all different types. We can go from country to country, right? Because I was just having a whole different conversation about like Haitians, right? And now the narrative of like, if we talk about definitions, like
hit a nerve, you hit a nerve over
that's
there.
Sony would be offended.
Hear me out, right? Hear me out. The definition of Latino, like Haitians are a part of that definition. Do we call Haitians Latino? No. Why is that?
They've chosen to opt out.
They in the same island as Dominicans.
No, and I would say that
because 100% of their side of the island is Black.
Because
that is the only
they
reason.
did that.
Pretty much
but if you
can't
how,
tell me any other.
No,
thing.
I know that, but I'm saying like if you look at how the island was technically separated from when it was all Hispaniola.
Yeah, but the island was separated in that way. Why? Right, because they were killing each other. Because the French and the Spanish were killing each other over the island, and they were like, "All right, the only people that are left are Black, so like let's just split it."
Yeah, but then they gave the dark people the bad part of it, kept all the good for what they would call a Dominican.
Yeah, right. And then there was Trujillo, and he did all of his stuff, and we can keep going, right? But once again, why is any of this important for people who are listening and they're like, "What the fuck? This is all about owning people's bodies." Right? And
where to tie it in,
right? Like we have always been able to make money off of owning people, off of owning people's bodies, because we have been able to make money off of hating Black and brown people, even though people steal our culture.
That's it. And if you really boil it down, people, listeners, I'm gonna pop a question to y'all. So when you turned on the radio to the what do they call that? The top 40 station. No, I'm talking about like in general, because we're tied in iHeart. So you go to a top 40 station, let's say Kiss 106.7. Okay. A lot of those songs aren't designed for us, but if you listen to the sound and the production of it and the way the artist looks in the video, it's all hip hop culture.
Bro, there's so much music that like I'll Shazam, right? Because that's my little favorite app.
Still?
And I'm like, who's this? Right? I'm old.
So
like,
2004?
I'm old, brother. Like it still works. It works.
I know it works.
I just need to know what's the name of the song while I'm driving. I just need to hit the button.
Microphone on.
Right? That's too much. See, I don't even know how to do that. But for me, it's like, oh, I like this song. What's this song? And then I look back and I see a white face. And I'm like, get the fuck
like,
out.
yeah, right.
No, but honestly, everybody, you want to admit it, country music was founded by Charlie Pride, a Black guy.
Bro, every genre of music
Chuck Berry
was by black people.
Yeah, let's go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and break it down to you.
Salsa, merengue, every Spanish genre, every different type of Spanish music.
Let's go to the beginning of rock and roll. Chuck Berry. Little Richard, like these are people before there was an Elvis, before there was a Beatles.
Elvis even told you he stole.
Oh, his biggest song, Hound Dog, was the black woman who basically raised him. She was singing about her husband.
Elvis was a Christian, that's the only thing he did.
Yeah, but I mean,
I'm sure he was a fine one.
Right,
like. There are so many ways in which we have seen white culture steal from black and brown culture, because in order for white people to be able to subscribe to white supremacy, they have to let go of their culture, right? So we don't see too many white people running around talking about Sweden, bitch. Like, what?
That part.
Like, unless it's Swedish fucking meatballs, right? Like, and IKEA's got you on that, baby. Like, white people do not run around with their flags down the block. Like, I'm from a neighborhood in Queens where we have a parade during the summer. Every fucking week, there is a damn parade for some fucking country, because we are
Switzerland.
We are the melting pot of New York City, right? I grew up like it was
not the Bronx?
No.
Oh.
No.
Okay, sorry.
You get so offended, right?
Yeah, my bad. Like, I've been in New York once in the last 20 years.
Because demographic of the Bronx has always been black and brown
like
people.
2001.
The demographic of the Bronx has always been black and brown people, right?
Yeah, the
Black, Latino, specific. And the reason why is because as black and brown people, as black and brown people have been pushed out of other neighborhoods, we've been pushed to the Bronx. Right? And gentrification, as it came up from Brooklyn into Queens, through Manhattan, and could no longer live in Washington Heights, the white people started to cross over to the Bronx. And all of a sudden, now it was really important to have a new Yankee Stadium. I drove to New York City a couple of weeks ago. It is a beautiful stadium. I'm not going to hate, right? Like, I grew up going to Shea. Like, you know, now I go to Citi Field, and I mean, I even still call it Shea, right? But there are these buildings that are everywhere, right? Because everything is a business. There are so many young white people who go to New York City to make money, to become these entrepreneurs, to live this life, to then go back home and put all of that money that they made into their communities.
Except Rochester,
right?
My God. I don't know what the hell they tried to do to downtown, but it obviously didn't work.
They're making a little river, like a San Antonio,
the
river walk.
That's a creek.
Nah, the Gentrified River. That's
I'm talking about, well, in San Antonio, it's a creek.
Well, the thing is, it's the same thing, right? Like, let's make this really glitzy, right? So young white people can come and want to live here, and we can start to push out black and brown folks.
That's the problem. And I hate to say this, but you know, my aunt's a realtor. We hosted out of her office for his first 2 years. And she even, like, we spoke about how they're basically fixing downtown to where black and brown people won't be able to be there after so long because of
they can't
the inflation of the shit they're putting there.
Yeah. So, you know,
I mean, you're talking about as far as commercial or residential?
Everything.
Everything.
Like, look at those. Can you afford a $2,000 a month apartment?
Sibley Square started $1,600.
Yeah, and it's and then I remember the spot me and Sony stayed in New York. I paid like $700 for that Airbnb.
That is,
and it was literally the size of this.
Yeah.
So then somebody go to Malik Evans, tell him, listen, you're doing all this. You're doing the Bullseye Plaza revitalization project. You know they're doing that too. Yeah. You're building the infrastructure. That's what I'm saying. You have to have a certain number of black and brown businesses. Simple as that. That's
right.
That,
but having the business versus having a residential place for you to live, what they want you to do is bring your business to the city, and then they want you to drive back to the suburbs where you now live at. What do you think the whole purpose of the interloop originally was? The city, pay your taxes here, and then go home and pay separate taxes.
Remember what the whole reason the interloop being built was so that those white folks can get into the city to work at Kodak. And
I just bought me a home in the city. I ain't going no.
And then
you know what? I'm gonna keep the property.
Oh, and then those same white folks who just decide to work here, now they have a problem with interacting with the city. So here, get on this ramp and they'll take you right back out where you want to go.
Well, and that's the thing. A lot of those people have a lot of social influence, what happens because of things like social media, right? So if you look through all of the terrible comments about things happening within the city, A lot of those come from people that don't even live there.
Nowhere
right?
near it.
And for me, being an advocate, like the past couple weeks, so there was an abortion rally on May 7th by Planned Parenthood. The following week was a march on reproductive justice.
When was it? Which?
So the abortion rally was at, is it Parcel 5?
Parcel 5, right
Yeah.
downtown.
right
yeah.
there.
Right?
Where Sibley? No, not where.
Where the
Like,
old
right across the
Midtown
street,
used to
right?
be.
So I was the last speaker. I've been the last speaker for both events. And it's important for me, especially in spaces, because Planned Parenthood has a following. And a lot of that following is white women, right?
Well,
but
they're who they do everything for.
Well, yes and no, right? The thing is that white women, they really like the idea of Planned Parenthood, right? And they support it wholeheartedly. Like white women will go to bat for Planned Parenthood, but what they won't do is they won't go back home and they won't have these conversations with their white husbands and their white daddies to make sure that they are being seen as equal, because white men say that they are not still. Right? We are a town that celebrates Susan B. Anthony, the white woman who stood on the necks of Black women in order to be equal to white men, right? We cannot continue to tell people, especially when white people come into these events, and it was very important for me to tell them, like, the majority of us do not live here, including myself, right? I live out in Greece. We're going to get in our cars and we're going to drive home. But on our way home, you are going to drive through neighborhoods and past neighborhoods on the highway that will be deeply affected by this situation happening, right? Because let's talk about New York State. We keep saying that New York State is fine, we're going to be okay, but we're not. We already have issues here in Monroe County with the amount of people that already come here for abortions, the people who already come here for prenatal health because of our hospitals, right? Our providers are already tight. They're already going through it. On top of that, if things were to happen, we've got some local elections coming up this year.
Yeah.
So we've got to make sure, one, our people are registered to vote.
That's a given.
Two, we have to know that who is running, right? Because I got to make sure I get his name right.
Which election are you referring to?
So right now I'm talking about governor.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, give me 1 second.
That's huge.
So,
that's huge.
From my understanding, Lee Zeldin, right, who's Republican, and he is running for office.
Governor, right?
Right?
No, Lee Zeldin is the white guy, right?
Okay.
The former military?
I haven't I mean, my guy was Governor Cuomo. I don't know how y'all feel about that. But that was my guy.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not mad at him for the possible sexual misconduct. I'm mad at him for
through my work, he's just provided a lot of funding that has been very beneficial to the community.
He gave you the money to get you looked the other way.
I'm
sorry, New York State. I love it.
I'm in a lot of spaces with that, right? So, one, I'm always somebody who's going to believe somebody who says that they are a victim of sexual abuse, right? And even though, from my understanding, he is going through the necessary legalities to make sure he clears his name. And if and when 100%, everybody is just like, okay, I lied, or okay, it didn't happen, or whatever, then I can give him the card on that. When it comes to the way the man did his job, he did his job.
But when also with the amount of nursing home deaths that I heard were concealed on his watch.
Say that again?
Remember when like COVID was happening? New York State was like in this great outstanding of the amount of deaths and the way they were handling it.
Yeah.
He was concealing.
I know.
Like
I feel you, bro.
I mean, my mother was like,
but it was such an unknown at the time, not to give him any benefit of the doubt.
Shit,
but it's just like they was clearing out.
I mean, he did
football fields.
No, they were putting bodies in the Hudson.
He was prioritizing the youth
and
versus
the people that were still alive. Yeah.
Exactly, which wasn't right. He could have utilized that. You know what I'm saying? And
everybody could have did better, bro. But we didn't know. We didn't know, bro. I mean,
everybody could have did better.
Like, look at us 3 years later.
That's a fact.
Right?
What do we really know?
Talking about people going forward, Lee Zeldin has said, from my understanding, if he is put sort of into power or voted into power, that he will make sure that the person who is, I believe, in charge of like the health department, the commissioner of the health department, he will make sure that they are pro-life.
Dr. Mendoza. Oh, no, you're talking about the state health department.
I'm talking about the state.
So
he will make sure that they are pro-life.
So basically, New York State will change to...
Yes. Our laws may change, right? So
even
though
even
though it has been written into law, there are so many things that still could be dismantled.
And it's so unfortunate that the state of New York, the beautiful state of New York, could potentially be a have a Republican government.
And I mean, I hate
this.
Which changes funding for everything, right? This changes funding for comprehensive sex education. This changes funding for.
I'm out of a job. I'm a caseworker in the public defender's office. Just to air that out, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That's probably going to be gone.
Yep.
All of them.
Right?
All of that.
There's barely any education that already goes to our young folks. There's barely any good health coverage that goes to our young folks. And so all of this is a snowball effect, as you had mentioned before. And I think what has been terrifying for me is teaching high school, going in and asking them, like, do you guys know what is going on? Now, I know my kids in the prison system, they can't watch the news. Right? They're not allowed to watch the news, so they have no idea what's going on. Really? Right? I think some of that
These are kids, but still deserve to watch
Why
the
they don't
news.
need to watch the news, though?
Because a lot of the stuff that's on the news either is going to be about them or people coming to them or people who...
Where they get information.
And a lot of the kids are on the news who are in there.
That's true, too.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
A lot of them is on
okay, so to get more into the topic. So now that we're here.
What
happens?
So right now,
and Portia, after I would like for you to comment from your side of it being that, you kind of just had a baby right before all this happened.
Hear me out real quick, right? So
congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Real quick,
you don't look like you had a baby.
Prenatal milestone abortion.
6 weeks today.
Yeah, I probably hung out with her 4 weeks ago.
Because we on maternity leave.
Right.
Oh no, I work for myself. Ain't no maternity leave. I got to make sure I got enough money to make it to the next time they come around.
Talk about it.
You see how the people doing us? They didn't want to give me no disability. They're like, "What's that?
Yeah,
you're not getting that. Did you have insurance through your company?" I'm like, "Oh, okay."
My company.
Yep.
My company.
Yep.
That is
right. So 80% of abortions occur before the 10-week process. Right before somebody is 10 weeks pregnant. Do y'all understand how pregnancies are calculated?
9 months, 40 weeks, right?
Yes,
40
but
weeks.
people are pregnant technically on paper 2 weeks prior to conception.
Yeah.
How does that work?
So 2 weeks before you and the person you even had sex with, they would be considered pregnant.
What they say, it takes 11 to 13 days to be able to find out that you're pregnant.
Mm-hmm. Right. So remember that sperm can live inside of a uterus for 3 to 5 days. Right. So this is all about ovulation. So if y'all had sex on Monday, but they didn't ovulate till Wednesday,
it's still there.
Right. Your sperm could still be inside of them, but also
I hope my bros is paying attention.
I
hope my bros.
I had to do some math just now.
The sperm may not get into the egg all of the way and do the things until Thursday, Friday.
Right.
Right. So now what doctors do is they give a lot of leeway when it comes to pregnancy and numbers until the baby or the pregnancy is far enough that they can pinpoint based off of like size and measurements.
When they talk about like the heartbeat, once a heartbeat is detected, then it's murder.
So most of the time you don't hear heartbeats. What you hear are waves, right?
Like talking to dolphins, right? Like. No, that's
funny, bro.
And then also I saw something, and I hate to tell you all this, but actually I backed it up with Facebook. Don't hate me. But it said like there's a reason why they don't do X-rays for pregnant women. They do ultrasounds. It's because the image of a baby is fucking terrifying.
They give us 3D images. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but 3D images.
No, exactly.
I don't know. The last time I've been through this I know, but then too, it's like the last time I actually was at a point, and that's probably 3 times. But the last time I was at that point with a girl where we're at the doctor, and it turned out it wasn't mine. Knock on wood. But yeah,
always a story.
It's like, okay, I get the whole technology and the picture being more vibrant and fucking real than ever, but they were saying like, if I can go through my Facebook,
the reason they don't is because X-rays can give you cancer.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Talk about it.
They don't want to risk you potentially getting those waves to your baby before your baby happens.
This is why I filled the panel with females today.
Before your baby is it's viable to
Right.
go through something like that.
That's it. That's why I filled the panel with females.
Teach us, ladies.
That's
Teach us.
Because something like that could, could cause a miscarriage.
Not you, baby.
Oh, okay.
Don't even do that.
You don't want to take a break, or you want to keep on going?
I think
How much strawberry y'all got?
Eric definitely need a
I
break
need a
over there.
cigarette.
He about to
Does anybody have
die.
a cigarette?
No cigarettes for you, sir.
You want a shot, bro?
Nah, I'm good.
I was gonna say I got some wine.
I only got
There you go.
I only got some green.
They're trying to intoxicate me. Nah,
I seen that. I'm like, did he really just walk in with a bottle? Like, oh,
that's
okay.
what he does.
Well, no, at least I felt better. I was like, okay, because I just put mine in the cup. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so
this is a safe place.
I got water, y'all.
let me go talk to someone.
You
I
need
need
water
some of
though
that.
after the day
I
you
know-
just
I
had.
normally chase this with water.
That's always a good idea.
What is
Tequila. Yo, good old pepper.
No, thank you, sir.
We want you to have
No,
the
thank
pepper
you.
shot.
No,
No, I
I'm
don't
good.
fool around with no clear liquor. I drink whiskey. Drinks whiskey.
Yes.
No, I don't drink cognac. I don't fool around with that. It's like
I'm a
cough
Jack.
syrup.
I'm a Jack girl.
I am the Jameson queen. I don't want no Jack either. So I was supposed to initially be on when y'all did the show the first time a couple years ago. Right. Right.
That's the original 3.
So I teach sex education. Eric and I probably met like 4 years ago or so.
2018.
About. I teach sex education to people who live in like youth detention centers, foster care group homes, homeless shelters.
My boy, I used to work in foster care. I worked for the foster care intake team.
Awesome.
My boy was Sean Pryor. You probably know him.
Yep.
Of course. Yeah, that's my boy at the youth bureau.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Mr. Pryor and I, he's my connect